While I don't typically watch sports, I do enjoy sports themed movies, especially when they're exciting and they include a touching story. Gran Turismo is based on the true story of a gamer who aspires to become a real race car driver. Is this going to pay off, and should you see it on the big screen? A struggling working class gamer, a failed former race car driver, and an idealistic motorsports exec risk it all to take on the most elite sport in the world. This stars David Harbour, Orlando Bloom, and Archie Madekwe, and is from director Neill Blomkamp. Now, Madekwe plays the character of Jan, this dude who spent an inordinate amount of time playing the PlayStation game Gran Turismo and ended up qualifying for a once-in-a-lifetime chance to become a real race car driver. The premise sounds a bit ridiculous, or at least cheesy, and I think that's why this story works so well. We start with an idea that feels so far removed from reality that we get to be skeptics along with the majority of the characters. David Harbour plays a former racer who is now a chief engineer, and he wholeheartedly believes this stunt dreamt up by Nissan marketing guy Orlando Bloom is going to be an utter disaster. He's probably even a larger skeptic than we are. So to then watch character progression and growth all the way around feels satisfying and earned. Now, Madekwe as Jan, he doesn't start out terribly likable. He's not a bad guy, but he comes across a bit arrogant. Luckily, though, the story allows us to get greater insight into his psyche and then understand his motivations, which includes not only his dreams, but also his fears. I love how this establishes the character and then allows for the potential of massive growth. Now, Harbour also gives us an opportunity to witness a ton of growth, too. He plays a grumpy guy, which is kind of similar to his Hopper character in Stranger Things. He's realistic and he's no nonsense, and even though he comes across as cold and unfeeling, he gets to showcase a wide range of emotion, making him a very endearing character. Orlando Bloom isn't in this nearly as much, but his interactions with Harbour are typically pretty humorous because they are on completely opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to the racing aspect and what is expected from the racers. He's all about the marketing, spin, and image, and Bloom, he captures that well. He's not slimy, but doesn't always have the best interest of the right person at the top of his mind. And the movie is 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and a lot of it is filled with racing. Now, if you're not a car person or not even somebody that enjoys motorsports, this may sound like a daunting idea, and maybe even a turnoff for the movie. But the way this is filmed is actually very captivating and exciting. I was on the edge of my seat so many times because of how invested I was with Jan's character. The story built a platform where he became somebody that I absolutely wanted to see succeed. And the way this is filmed really helps us to put us right alongside Jan. Sometimes even seeing the world from his eyes, which is great because it's not overused, but it also creates a sense of the stress and tunnel vision that he's experiencing. There's a lot of in-car action for us to see the expressions on Jan's face as then he goes around the track at these breakneck speeds. And then we also get external shots that help to reinforce not only the speed, but the ever-present inherent danger. There are quite a few drone shots that are used to film the racing, and while most of it is pretty great, especially as the drone will be very close to car level and then race towards them, almost like this game of chicken, it creates a ton of momentum and adrenaline to watch. But then with that said, some of the drone work, it's not good. There are more than a few times when it appears the camera is just struggling to figure out where it wants to point and what it's trying to shoot. And this ends up creating a shaky and not smooth flying sensation. And during these moments, the camera broke me out of the excitement and it made me focus on it rather than on the thrill of the cars. Now, something that I thought was really cool about the production for this is that the real Jan, he appears in this film. He's the stunt driver for Madekwe's Jan. So when we watch external race shots of Jan driving, it's the real Jan tearing up the track. And I love that he was part of the production. Not only for the racing part, but also to provide correct story context and character insight so that the movie was able to stick to the truth as closely as possible. And I know some things are exaggerated or even dramatized for the story, but the heart of it is rooted in Jan's real-life experience. And even with all the excitement that's created by the story, it did feel a tad bit too long. The first act is probably the slowest, but I think it's also necessary to establish Jan and his home life so that we can really get a grasp on his motivations. What he's trying to accomplish, and then the mental obstacles he had to overcome because of his family relationship. Jimon Hunsu and Jerry Halliwell Horner play his parents, and I appreciate the dynamics that are created between them. There's relatable tension that doesn't feel cheap or magnified for the story. It's kept grounded, which then leads to palpable and realistic interactions later that really pay off emotionally. Something that I'm not always a fan of is CGI overlays that can distract from what's happening on screen. Now in this, there are times where a lot of overlays are at play, but they ended up looking good and then enhancing what's being told rather than distracting from it. And plus, there's a circularity to some elements that tie the beginning with the end in a really cool way. The effects work to put Jan in a vehicle while he's playing the game, giving us the sense of how he's viewing the world and how realistic of an environment it becomes for him. This then works excellently towards the end as he remembers what it was like to be at the console, pursuing his love through the game, all while experiencing the real thing in the present. Now, I've heard some comparisons to Days of Thunder, and there are certainly elements that parallel each other. One thing that is definitely different is the love story angle. I mean, it was kind of a major arc within the older movie, and while this does have a love interest within Gran Turismo, it's minimalized, and it's only included in very small parts so that it doesn't detract from the main story, nor does it feel like some odd inclusion that's shoehorned in. I mean, it fits naturally into the story, and it's appropriately kept in the background. Now, I love the underdog aspect of this. While it's mainly a predictable storyline, it doesn't take away from the adrenaline, emotion, and suspense of the narrative. We're rooting for Jan to succeed pretty much all the way through, and there are enough ups and downs and even some surprises that add to the overall tension necessary to then maintain the dramatic element of the story. It's not just cars going around a track and the camera showcasing the speed and maneuvers. We care about the person behind the wheel, so the stakes really do matter and are of consequence. I mean, had the movie failed to create a connection with Jan and even Harbour's character, this would lose all its heart and become a very rote and droning movie about cars going fast. Surprisingly, though, it accomplishes the feat of drawing us into the characters and making us concerned for their outcome. And then it shows us cars going really fast. So overall, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed Gran Turismo. The true story of a gamer turned racer is inspiring and uplifting, enhanced by awesome race cinematography and wonderful character development. Archie Madekwe is excellent, showcasing an everyman underdog who surpasses expectations and obstacles to achieve his dreams. Beautiful special effects are crafted to enhance the storytelling, placing audiences in the driver's seat to experience the breakneck speeds and the blur of the world passing by. And while the movie is a tad too long, this has enough adrenaline-pumping excitement to keep you at the edge of your seat, even if you're not into car racing. There's no sex or nudity, a lot of profanity, and some violence. I'd give Gran Turismo 4 out of 5 couches. So what's a racing-themed movie that you enjoy? I love both Ford v Ferrari and my guilty pleasure, Speed Racer, but I'd love to know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.